Hi, my name is Najatao, and I just wanted to speak off the cuff about this book that I just read. It's by the woman who invented dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a pretty common therapy nowadays. This isn't quite correct, but I view it as kind of an alternative to cognitive behavioral therapy because you will see a lot of workbooks for anxiety or for anger or for grief or for PTSD or just all kinds of things. And most of those workbooks are CBT, but quite a few of them are DBT also. And DBT perhaps is most notable for how it is the recommended treatment for borderline personality disorder. I don't know if DBT is used to treat other personality disorders or not, but Marsha Linehan developed DBT because she made a vow to God that she was going to dedicate her life to helping people who I'm going to have to through some hoops to get my point across to people who want to disappear, if you catch my drift. For me, the ending was a little bit anticlimactic because it was really, really difficult for the author to come out about her history of being institutionalized. And I understand that that was a really taboo kind of subject for most of the 20th century. I don't know that it's still such a taboo subject in the 21st century. I mean, it surely is to some extent, but I think people with good sense now kind of realize that you could really diagnose pretty much anybody with a mental health disorder. You really could. And I mean, there's going to be different severities, of course, and I think symptoms come in and out of people's lives. But yeah, my assumption was that Marsha Linehan, the author of this book, had borderline personality disorder. Like I was kind of surprised at the quote that she left at the end that people were that a patient was shocked that she had come out as having been institutionalized at one point in her life. And I'm like, really? I don't see why you'd be interested in a topic like wanting to disappear unless you had some kind of personal experience with that was very difficult. And I mean, if you're going to shame people for being institutionalized, you can also just shame family members for having a family member that's institutionalized. Like if you want to play the shame game, you can do that to people who associate with you too. I mean, just to give a little bit of a summary of the story, Marsha introduces herself as a girl who just kind of has some overexcitabilities, like she can't stop talking. She's got the nickname, I think it was Motormouth Marsha, and she is a very precocious child. She's a very intellectually gifted person, and that's pretty apparent from a young age. But she feels very out of place in her home. She feels like she's not this quiet, submissive girl, and that's expected of her gender at that time. and her mother is very judgmental. She's always comparing other girls to Marsha, and the implication is always that Marsha should shape up. Why isn't Marsha like this other person? And the father is described as very conservative, but she feels abandoned by her father. Once she turns, I think it was about 16 or 17, and she develops depression, and she, plans to go in for like 2 weeks to a mental hospital to just get a little bit of help. And they institutionalize her for 2 years. So I thought that Marsha Linehan, before I read this book, I thought that she had borderline personality disorder. After reading the book, I think she just had depression. And she herself doesn't think that she had borderline personality disorder. But in the institution, she is considered one of the most difficult patients. They give her extreme treatments that just sound really horrible, like wrapping her in like frozen cold sheets and isolating her for months on end. Just terrible stuff. I don't think we treat the mentally ill great now. There are a lot of injustices still, but it's amazing what they felt comfortable with doing to people just because they were considered mentally ill. It's just astonishing, the rights that they felt comfortable with stripping away from people. But Marsha got worse and worse and worse in the institution, probably because she entered this cycle where they would treat her like really badly, and she would respond to that with self-destructive behaviors. And they would respond to her self-destructive behaviors by treating her badly, and those treating her badly would result in her wanting to hurt herself more. And so that just went on for like 2 years, and they gave her electroshock therapy, and they gave her drugs. And by the time she got out of the institution, she said she was like a zombie. She couldn't even remember where the dishes were in the house that she grew up in. And she said that she lost a lot of her memory from that time in her life. But Marsha moves into a women's like a women's YMCA. Um, and she continues to self-harm, and she continues to have thoughts of suicide, and society treats her very, very harshly for reaching out for help. And it's really horrifying to see the way that people would respond to these cries for help. I don't think it's different today. I think that if you want to disappear, they'll just take you to the hospital and they'll send you a bill for like $10,000. And I think that, yeah, it's no better than the 1960s or the 1950s. I mean, I guess maybe it was in some ways better then because it wasn't so expensive. Wouldn't be so hard to climb out of that financial hole. But Marsha made that vow to God to try to help other people get out of hell. When she's young, it's hard to imagine her doing that, but this woman has an incredible personality. I don't know, if you're into something like the Enneagram, I would say she is like an 8, the challenger. It seems like she faces difficulties and challenges head on, and no problem is too big or too complicated that it can't be broken down and solved. This woman has a very quick wit, and when she would talk about the effects of the electroshock therapy on her brain and how it caused her to forget how to play the piano. She used to be able to play the piano beautifully, but she forgot all her music and she forgot big chunks of her childhood. I thought, okay, well, maybe that's permanently messed up her brain, but I think that her brain grew back. I think it must have made new connections or something, and it grew back strong. Because this woman is very, very, very sharp. She is very quick witted, and it's really fun to go through the book and read some of her retorts. Especially some of her retorts to criticism and some of her responses to setbacks. She always handles those things in a very logical manner. She's very good at seeing inconsistencies in people's logic. So Marsha works while she goes to school, which is pretty incredible. She's supporting herself and working and going to school. And in the book, you see her kind of climb the ranks of being a psychologist. She seems like she's always being pushed towards being a clinician, so working with clients. But she always has kind of a research bent. She's always had this logical mind, and she finds that science is this amazing way to make sure that the treatments you're giving to people are effective. So Marsha really doesn't think that the psychoanalytic technique that was really popular in that time is based on sound reasoning. So she believes in evidence-based treatment. And she climbs the ranks of being a psychologist. She becomes a professor, and she develops DBT, and a lot of it is based on her her spirituality, her religious beliefs. She grew up Catholic, and a lot of this memoir is a spiritual journey. If I had to put this memoir in a category, it would be spiritual journey. She starts off a Catholic, and we learn that she wanted to be a saint, and she would take a lot of meaning and inspiration from stories about Catholic saints, but she'd clash a lot with the beliefs of, well, more like the formalities of the Catholic Church, organizational issues and that kind of thing. And Marsha slowly develops more of a mystical belief in God. So in Christianity, there are people who kind of think of God as more like a person, and then there's the more mystical philosophy about God, that God is, I mean, it's going to be different for all the mystics, I think, but I think mysticism leads more into ideas like there's a common thread through all religions. God is everything and in everyone, that sort of thing. And so she becomes kind of like a Christian mystic, but she works with the church a lot, and she has these moments of kind of enlightenment a couple times in her life, at least one of them, while wrestling with things in a Christian setting, in a church setting. But Marsha eventually starts to investigate Zen Buddhism because she feels she's developing techniques now for working with people who want to disappear. And she is kind of developing something called acceptance. And she really feels that Zen Buddhism, which she had been introduced to kind of sort of a little bit before, because the church she had been in, I want to say that church she had been in was next door to a Buddhist monastery or something like that, or a meditation group. But yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that she mentions when it comes to DBT is willingness. So, willingness is relinquishing the desire to control life and allowing life to happen and participating fully in life. So, if you find yourself in life and you're going along and someone needs help, you help them. Or if you find that you're going along in life and the dishes need to be done, you do the dishes. Willfulness is like getting angry that things aren't the way you want them to be, wanting control over how life unfolds. But yeah, I feel as though that's enough to give you kind of a flavor of the memoir. Again, well, I never told you the title. The title is Building a Life Worth Living by Marsha Linehan. And it's a really excellent memoir. It's very moving. I highly recommend it. Building a Life Worth Living is a tagline or kind of like a slogan for DBT. But anyway, that's enough for now. I bid you good night, and I hope you'll join me later for another video. And I just wanted to add one more thing from a literary standpoint. Marsha's writing style has a tendency to jump forward in time and then jump way back in time and then jump forward in time. And the timeline is a little confusing. I feel as though it's tolerable, but a little confusing.